We are coming back after the long summer. It is now post Labor Day, flying into September with another off the record on the rocks. Over the Labor Day weekend, everyone taking a little downtime, a little me time, hopefully a little time in the sunshine, maybe watching tennis stars like Naomi Osaka or 3D printing Labubus, blinging them out with, what did she call it? What did I say it was?
Little rhinestone gems?
Yes.
You're blinging out Labubus?
Exactly. Blinging out Labubus.
Billie Jean.
That's it. Yes, I blanked on Billie Jean Bling. It is a full narrative. There is a ton to get to. Maybe the focus was in New York. Maybe the focus was on Formula One in Amsterdam. Maybe people have left Jackson Hole, or maybe they're still taking vacations. I don't know where to take it from here, but how was your Labor Day?
Labor Day was great. Little fantasy football, little barbecue, little selling of Ethereum bags towards the all-time high and transitioning sideways into a nice dip on Bitcoin. Congratulations on hitting the K dip.
Oh yeah, called it perfectly.
Called it perfectly. We didn't talk about it on the show too much. We're going to get back to talking about specific financial information and also specific use of collectibles. I mean, honestly, it was a great time. Bitcoin dropped to 108 and change. I think it was a high 107, but I missed it. I was able to buy into that. These dips are important, guys, because the idea it's going to go to 55 again or 32 again. I mean, these days are long over. The institutions are already trying to take this thing to a place where average people like myself, you, our listeners, are not going to be able to acquire Bitcoin. So that was a fun opportunity. But yeah, I've been totally caught up in this whole craze, this collectible craze. I thought that Pokemon and like sort of that whole card trading economy, which I'm very familiar with from all the kids in the area, was sort of the pinnacle. But from the new Labubus to this thing called the Smiskies, which is another collectible.
Grab a drink. It's time for another episode of Off the Record on the Rocks. Join Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara as we discuss the latest in all things Web3, AI, metaverse, and crypto. Tune out the noise and turn up the signal as we pour ourselves into the future. Better make mine a double.
Character and the ability to bling them out and to put them into little Instagrammable, almost like dioramas. They almost have like little storylines because they each have their own personalities, but they're just little static dolls, right? They don't really move or they're not articulated. I personally don't get it, but I think you might have a better finger on the pulse on this one.
I did spend a little bit of time this weekend at Collector's World. Shout out to Collector's World, looking for some PSA Pokemon cards to get back, to get them graded. And you think about, that from an economic perspective of people are taking these physical cards, they're creating data around them. What number it is, what grade it is, the kind of the serial number, all the information you can collect about how many of them were printed, how many of them are in circulation, how many of them are still not opened or haven't been found. And they're putting serial numbers on them, barcodes inside of plastic cases to tokenize it.
Tokenizing.
Effectively.
Huh.
Yeah, and I think about that from an IP perspective. I'll connect one other dot, but we talked about on the show last time, K-pop Demon Hunters, and now this brand new IP franchise that, Netflix has opened up. This is now, I think, the most streamed movie ever. It is now breaking all records. And I think about this idea of owning the IP and Labubus and what that represents and owning the IP. But here I am, 3D printing my own Labubu that's not an authentic, but I have remixed it, bring that back in here, right? I created my own version of it. And we know that this is okay from an economic standpoint, because as long as you're treating it as a derivative, as art, that it cannot be held liable for any IP infringement. So remix away your Labubus as long as it's your diamond encrusted jewels on them, right?
I mean, you're talking about some layer 2 Labubu intrigue. There's another, because Labubu in this case would be the layer of truth. The IP creator creates that. And now that, like you said, that the word derivative, and that's something we should be talking about a lot, but the derivative of that and your ownership of the fractionalized slice of that Labubu with your modified art to it. And then to even kind of take it one more layer, if we call this like a UGC or a user generated content item, maybe the Labubu that you 3D printed with the intent to send to Naomi Osaka, so she might hang it off of her tennis bag at the next match. Like, what if a user-generated Labubu became the most important Labubu to a professional tennis player? And then you might have you might need to create of fans to operate basically the fractionalized ownership of the 3D printed jeweled encrusted Labubu that Naomi Osaka carries on her bag.
And if you want to argue with me and say that, no, this is the original, and I say, no, this is the original, and you say, no, this is the original, then I'm going to stand up a poly market and I'm going to let the market decide which one is the original. I mean, that is wild to be pulling all of these threads. And I think just to bring us down to earth for a second, because I think we can get real heady and all of that. It's fun. It's fun to go down these paths. But what we are demonstrating is that the changing rules of the game are now allowing for these kinds of business models to emerge. I can't be more clear about that the rules have shifted. The gameplay has changed. The Monopoly game of how you buy and sell those and that Boardwalk and Park Place and Marvin Garden, and you tokenize them and you pay them with paper money. And the way that game, the way you accumulate wealth, the way you own is changing. We've been saying this. And
yeah, that's good. And the way you describe it, it really is. Maybe this is finally how we all grasp what the NFT craze was trying to explain and trying to communicate and trying to kind of enamor itself into the lives of all the techies, is that when you have a real world asset, the Monopoly analogy, right? It's utilities, it's properties, it's things you can get your head around, electricity and water and Marvin Gardens. But maybe the challenge of NFTs all along was people said, well, I don't get it. It's just a little JPEG of a ape. It's a little guy who looks like he's lo-fi. Well, now I can say, look, this is the little picture of the Labubu, or this is a little picture of my house. Now it makes sense. I've tokenized it. Well, here's the tokenized version of that because there's an easy real world asset parallel. Maybe all along the NFT company should have been making, I remember a few of them were going to actually make the physical versions to collect. I want to say Gary Vaynerchuk's whole idea was actually to create these was NFT to the physical real world asset, where that's all, of course, backwards and ridiculous. In fact, it's the real world asset first. K-pop Demon Hunter, I'm in love with it. Labubu with gems on it, I'm in love with it. Well, obviously now I want to go deeper. Tell me how we tokenize it.
Yeah, and also the network effect that you get. You sort of joked as layer 2 Labubus, and I made the point of like which ones are real and which ones are the original. And what I think this starts to demonstrate is the network effect, the composability of you could have layer 2, layer 3, layer 4 Labubus, copies on copies on copies of remixed IP. If it's on the blockchain, the network benefits whether it's real or not, whether it's layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. If everyone's talking about Labubus, I don't care whether they're on Solana, Ethereum, XRP. I don't care how you minted the Labubu, as long as you can show me its point of origin. You can show it to me on the blockchain. You can show me the data, who bought and sold it, right? All the things that actually make the story and the lore come to life on the blockchain. I mean, pull all that through of this tokenization of everything.
Yeah, and the truth of it, right? I mean, you were just at a collector's event. And how'd you call it when you get the rating on the Pokemon card? It's
the PSA rating.
The PSA rating. And that is required. There's an entire, not even boutique, there's an entire thriving middle market of experts. I'm assuming they would refer to themselves as such, experts, or I don't even know what the other word would be, but someone who scientifically, an authenticator, because in order for a block on a blockchain to be whole, it has to be authenticated. There's a human version authenticating and saying, well, this is authentic. So we know it's rife. The Pokemon world, there are so many counterfeit cards. Kids will come across them. They'll look at it like, oh no, look, you can see the paper is too thick right here or whatever. The idea of counterfeiting goes away if there is a blockchain that has a minting date that shows you very specifically when you hit the QR code or you hit the scan code, the tokenized version of that specific card exists in a non-mutable, non-fungible ledger. That's going to finally fix this renegade criminal market of all of these counterfeited Labubus and counterfeited Pokemon cards eventually, right?
Yeah, or just making the point that it can be copy pasta, that you can copy the NFT, but you don't own the original. And there is a way to prove that. And if you don't believe me, ask the poly market and let the market decide. I'm going to go to a whole different place here, but I was Googling as you were talking. This is an article from Axios from August 23rd, so not more than a week or so ago. Pokemon trading cards have leveled up to retail gold. Why it matters. This is 1 in 5 adults reported buying Pokemon cards for themselves. Similar collectability of the bobblehead boom and the recent Labubu toy craze.
Boy.
U.S. toy sales rose 6% from January to April, according to Circana. Zoom in, Walmart Marketplace saw trading card sales soar 200% from February to June 2025, growing X year over year. That's from the world's largest retailer. And Target also talking about sales up nearly 70%, passing 1 billion. So think about eBay. Where eBay originally created this decentralized marketplace. You can buy and sell anything. What becomes the most important thing to know? Is it real? How do I know if it's real? Great if it's in a PSA case. Even better if I've got it on the blockchain. Do I care what blockchain it's on? Well, not at the moment, because there's not an official layer 1 blockchain that's been assigned to Pokemon. There are official layer 1 blockchains being assigned right now to the dollars. And to the bills and to the money. And we can move all of this conversation through to what is happening in the financial markets, what is happening on the global scale of countries. I'll pull one other thread through, because we were sort of joking here about knowing what's real and what's not. And I sent you this article. Again, I can jump all over the place here. But the article about
I love it.
Publicis and WPP not knowing who's buying media from which agency and who they are targeting to, and effectively buying data from subsidiaries, targeting other companies, targeting other ad networks that are owned by their own companies or competitors, and literally not being able to keep track of their own target marketing data of who they are trying to reach and sell to. This is a problem that the blockchain and the tokenization could solve.
That's true. I mean, that's a lot to unpack there, but it brings it around to something that is, I think, at the core of all of this tokenization craze. I mean, let's just say that we know that everything over time will be tokenized. Let's just say it becomes a normal process as we move every real world asset and event from the poly markets to actual physical goods that become tokenized. If that's a true statement that eventually we all get to, then what is it that drives the popularity? What is it that actually moves the needle? And we've already established that there are these IP moments, these original content moments, which are honestly fewer and farther between these days, because there's so much derivative work. There's so much. I mean, when was the last time you saw a movie that was original? There's been a handful that come out in the last year. We talk about this all the time. They're always just different flavors of things you've seen before. And they try to hit the notes. They have all that data. What if audiences like? We'll put a scene in like that. Kind of characters, put some stuff like that. And then you have the example like K-pop Demon Hunters, where this new thing, it's not a story that's new, right? Good versus evil, a team of superhero-like people battling the evil demons or whatever. But it's the way in which it's told that was so unique, with music and with fashion and all these things that created, it captured our imagination. So I so similarly think like, the Publicis stories, that when you start to call out a narrative of it's the good versus evil, right? There are these massive marketing agencies, ad agencies. There's like 4 or 5 of them in the world that own every ad company. And they're buying and selling and generating all of this economic activity. And it turns out it's like same song, second verse from 20, 30 years ago, where it's hard to know when you're selling ads online, how many eyeballs are looking and what inventory is remnant and what's the cost per milli and all this stuff. And they create this whole new calculus that allows them all to enrich themselves, but at very questionable ways of like, wait, is anyone seeing any of this ads? Well, let me go find the right data to tell you the answer to the question that you want to hear. That to me is its own like version of a narrative of good versus evil. Another one I'll just throw to throw in the mix for you is, like you said, world events. Is there any, is Putin standing shoulder to shoulder with Xi Jinping and then bringing in Modi, and everyone's laughing and shaking hands and like leaning in and whispering like something to each other, jokes, I don't know, little minimums of information, enough that it causes them all to smile and kind of crackle a little bit. And are they whispering in English? Are they whispering in Russian? Are they whispering in Chinese? What are they whispering in? Their own little version of language that we will never know. But there they are, like the K-pop demon hunters. I can't tell if they're the heroes on this particular stage. I can't tell if they're the demons, but I can tell you they're trying to create a new narrative that puts them square in knee-high boots, carrying electric guitars and swords, and they're about to go to war against this devil of Americans, this single country who's playing by house rules and imposing house rules. Bring it back to Monopoly. Hey, you pass go. No, I landed on go. I get 400. No, that's the American house rules. You don't get 400 when you land on go if you're playing in India. There's this new narrative, and I feel like this is exactly what will capture all of our imagination. Tokenize, polymarket the outcomes of these new stories, because this is what will hold the interest of adults the way that K-pop Demon Hunters holds that of children. I mean, I feel like it's all one and the same.
And to follow that narrative, just like on Bachelor in Paradise, it seems like Modi and Putin have a very special relationship. They may in fact be falling for one another, but not quite there yet. Not quite in love, but clearly a very special and unique relationship. The language to even use and craft that narrative.
Special relationship. It's so good. It's Love Island 101, right? They're on the start of their journey. They're on their journey together.
I saw all of those headlines. It does feel a bit of a new world order. And when you say playing by house rules, and I think Monopoly, I think of the Monopoly man, and who owns the railroads? Warren Buffett, who is queued up for retirement in the next 30 days at the end of September, at the end of the fiscal year, I believe. I could be wrong here, so I have to fact check me. But I'm pretty sure that when he announced his retirement and the handover of Berkshire Hathaway to Greg Abel, I'm pretty sure they're looking at the end of this year or the end of September. But let's just say that the New World Order reemerges and the banks and the financial legacy of America changes hands. This good versus evil, light versus dark, America versus the country, with a very special relationship forming very far away that kind of looks like maybe a version of a shiny Labubu that I want to pay attention to. These guys over here seem like they are striking deals. They've got, again, I'm making light of it, but it is a new leaf. It is a total shift across the financial markets, the banks, the tariffs, the deals and handshake deals of countries, in what gets bartered and what each country gets, and what they give up. And meanwhile, the big announcement today out of Washington that there's an invasion within Chicago, within one of our own cities. I'm sorry? What?
Yeah. I mean, to get into even the National Guard deployments, it's its own. I don't even know what to make of that and the timing of these things. I mean, obviously, it's highly political in terms of trying to stymie and distract Democratic-led cities by creating this thing that you have to deal with. It's like, use your example, like the mayor of Chicago might have just landed on Park Place, and Park Place has 4 houses, and now he's got to pony up dough he does not have to make the National Guard go away and to get solvent again in this game of Monopoly. I think part of it, though, is that these are all retellings of events that have already happened and have been happening for so many years, right? For 2 years ago, when the BRIC countries, were famously meeting and negotiating and transacting outside of American dollars, there was the summer, 2 summers ago, when de-dollarization was the word that everyone was saying in the press. And why was that so important? Well, look, these guys, the BRIC countries, BRICK, right? You have your Brazil, your Russia, your India, your China. Maybe was there ever a K? Kazakhstan?
Korea in there? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. You put Korea in there, but they've been meeting and they've been having these events, and they have not really been publicized in the way that they are today. So the fact that we just saw the Love Island version of so many handshake, literally photographs with everyone shaking hands for really long periods of time to make sure every photographer gets a picture, smiling, leaning in, whispering like the Bachelor in Paradise. Like, what are they saying over there by the hot tub? You'll never know. The mics are turned off, and that kind of stuff. And then I think, okay, well, if these guys have been doing this, then it's like, is China, the thimble? Is Russia the iron? Is North Korea the car? Is India the shoe? Which tokens on this monopoly board are moving us around? And where is our poor governor of Chicago, our mayor of Chicago, the governor of the state of Illinois? Where are those poor guys on the board? Are they just left? Are they in jail?
Chance cards.
They're just pulling chance card after chance card and just praying that none of these things are going to come true.
Well, who's the focus?
It really does feel like an exposed game. But my point about the first part is just that it's all about how you market it, right? The BRIC countries have been meeting for years, and they have been negotiating and transacting in their currency for probably could be even decades at this point. And whenever crypto first started, or these secret deals, it's not new, but the fact that they're coming out and feel really comfortable showing off their little previously clandestine secret meetings, to show off and to be smiling and laughing, that is the new world order. That's what you're describing, which is, it shows that there's a lot of these countries that represent a massive amount of the population of the earth, right? These countries together combined are like orders of magnitude larger than the United States. And they are smiling and are happy because they can come out and they can show off, and they're demonstrating to the United States, we literally don't care anymore about what it is that you're doing. We're going to go do our thing our way. We're going to bring Kim Jong-un in and just have a massive military parade. He won't smile, but she will smile. He still shakes some hands. But this is a new level of marketing. I'm telling you, it's hard to know who the bad guys are and who the good guys are. Well, these guys seem like they're having a pretty good time.
I just looked up of how long Xi Jinping has been in power, and as president, it's since March 14th, 2013. So approximately 12 years and 6 months. I think about how long Putin has been in power. When we are now seeing these, the BRIC version of Jackson Hole play out.
There you go.
Play out on social media and in the mainstream media. And as you say, the game feels exposed, and we're hearing it firsthand from our own Trump administration in how they're doing these deals, and how it's enriching the Trump family as opposed to the United States government, and this good versus evil of now all of a sudden, we sort of on the global stage, and maybe this is where our listeners and generally Americans have to think through this, but these guys have known each other for at least 12 years and 6 months. They have likely done these meetings more consistently, generally longer, and are playing a longer game than a 4-year term, which is very interesting as these narratives around an autocratic government form in the US of how are we supposed to compete on the global stage against China and Russia and these leaders who don't cede power, that there is no peaceful transfer of power, that there in some way, I'm like checking my words here, but I'll be more direct. There is no democratic process, free democratic process to elect their officials. It makes you wonder and think even more, with a critical eye towards what is happening in DC, in Chicago, and how we can just pull this thread between the changing world order and what is happening here in our own country of, do you have to play the same game in order to win?
Yeah, that's, you're right? Modi is probably at least a decade in power. You just said she's been a little more than a decade. We know Putin's been since last century, right? Wasn't he around at the turn of the century? I feel like
longer.
I haven't been typing it up. But I want to say he's been in that. Well, he's also been in the mix just even before that. And it's not like the Kim Jong-un or previously Kim Jong-il is gonna. They're never gonna cede power.
1999.
That's like in where?
Boris Yeltsin unexpectedly resigned December 31st, 1999.
Unexpectedly resigned on New Year's Eve before the millennia.
Well, I'm reading that from Encyclopedia Britannica, which you would think is a reliable, trustworthy source and origin of information.
Is that layer one? I don't even know. But that is actually a really interesting point, because then it starts to look at, playing Monopoly with these guys must suck. If you ever want to play the thimble, and then she's just like, no, I played the symbol. I played it for 11 years. Well, how about the iron? Putin's like, no, I've been playing that since last century. You just can't sorry, your house rules don't play here. But maybe that's part of it, where if you're thinking, I mean, that is really the concept of that, which is the United States administration has to think about just a little window in time as it pertains to what, let's just say, could go on for who knows how much longer, right? These guys could stay in power until they are too old to continue to rule. If you know you only have that window, then there's only so much you're going to be able to get done. These guys, they know they'll just wait you out. So this hyper focus on digital, on tokenization, on blockchain, ledgers, a way to create something that even the BRIC countries can't mute, can't stop by time or by, just sheer number of bodies or military might or whatever the modern real world asset view of global power has been. How much real world oil do you control? How much real world land do you control? How many real world humans do you control? Well, God, you add up those 4 countries by themselves, that just dwarfs the United States in terms of all of the categories. But where can the United States in a 4-year window do the leapfrog, the trampoline around all these guys who, I hate to say it, you start calling them brick. I'm thinking brick and mortar. Like, I'm thinking old school. I'm thinking retail. I'm thinking, why is it that Claire's is shutting down stores? Why is it that Michael's, where you go get the little diamond to encrust the Labubus from, are struggling because of online? So if the United States can get online in every way as fast as possible, I mean, we already tokenized barrels of oil and tokenized pork bellies and tokenized, other commodities. It's like, this is what we have been doing. The light bulb just went off in everyone's mind. It's like, wait a second, this is our stock market. This is our futures and commodities. Why can't we just do that derivative version, layer 2 version of everything? Yeah. And let's get going as fast as possible. Call those guys back from Jackson Hole. I don't know what they're doing on vacation. I'm the Trump administration. I don't take vacation. Why? Because I'm looking over there, and Xi and Putin and Modi are not taking vacation. To them, August is a time to go and strategize about how they're going to come into Q4 and start knocking down, their dominoes, knocking the next thing over. So to me, this is like, it becomes a race against time. And I hadn't really thought of it in that parameter, but that's absolutely, I think, what's driving this insanity.
I'll put one more fine tip on that, is that if you're talking about the use of artificial intelligence to win a global race, garbage in, garbage out, you need the best data, verifiable on-chain data from every possible source being fed in to these AI models in order to have the best outputs, in order to have the most accurate assessment. You want, if treasury bonds are like an insurance policy and people buy futures of America, you bet on America, you got to have good data about the money, how much we're printing, how much we're spending, what's GDP, what's the labor statistics, what's the mortgage market doing, how many people are buying and selling and moving, and how many kids are they having? Because with all that data, you can predict the future. And what can America maybe do better than anybody, which is use the technology to create better inputs, to create and bet on a better future and better outputs.
Come to America. Come to the coast of California. Come to the coast of Virginia. We have clean air, we have clean water, and we have cleaner data. That's what the new postcards. That's what it's going to say. Wait till Gavin Newsom starts talking about how clean California's data is.
Look, call me. We got your campaign slogan. This is what is happening. And there is a way America wins on the global stage, but how do we sustain it? And the importance of why we're doing it, why the tokenization matters, why these new markets matter, why we're even talking about polymarket. And by the way, there is going to be this period of deregulation. But like all good things, what goes up must come down, and that period of deregulation will emerge with some level of regulation, whether it comes through the UK, whether it comes through privacy, whether it comes through from Apple in how they position the ownership and self-sovereignty of your digital identity and your digital ID. We are the tokens of those agents that WPP needs to advertise to. We are those eyeballs that they can't tell who they are reaching because they don't have good data.
And then, to bring it back down just to the underlying underpinnings really of what underlies everything you just said, is that when you say America and our data, well, now there's one layer below that, right? Which is Apple and Google and Netflix and Facebook or Meta and everyone else is in a race to have the cleanest and best data. At the same time, they're in a race to have the most accurate agents, AI agents working on the most pure large language models that are, you joke about Encyclopedia Britannica, right? Google is out there talking about universal ledgers and how we know there needs to be like a conflation. I hate to use the word that was thrown around so much in these sci-fi novels, but the singularity. Is there going to be a time where all the blockchains will have to be merged or at least referenced off of each other? If you could imagine a blockchain viewing AI that could in real time go and say, like you said, okay, how long has Modi been in power? And goes out and looks at the data across all of the prominent blockchains, including those around the world, and makes an AI assessment of the answer is 11 years and this many days. And that is the truth. That is and we're going to add that to the universal ledger. We're coming to this place where we're reducing blockchains to then find the data block in its purest form, the diamond block, for, to use an analogy of a real world asset that to this day, I think still is the hardest and most rare type of thing you can find, except that I've heard now they're growing them in labs and they're pretty hard to tell between the two, but that's another story. But you know what I mean? There's like, where are we looking for that universal ledger? Where is that data truth? Does the United States just have to validate it enough for ourselves to believe?
Well,
does the poly market decide ultimately, because humans and our view of reality create the truth? Or will there be a universal origin block?
So I think the concept of know your customer that banks have been subjected to, of KYC, we've talked about it here, the optical retina scan that we're seeing from OpenAI, that Facebook, but knowing your customer is important. I think you flip this on a decentralized market, there then becomes an obligation on you and I to know your issuer, know who issued the token. What chain did it come from? Where was its point of origin? Know, are they a reputable minting platform? Is it through Coinbase, Binance? Did I get it off of using a MetaMask wallet?
But how do I know all that? How do I, as a normal person, find all that information?
Yes, your agent's going to have to go do it. And I was going to make one other point here that I did see last week, and I think we talked about this, and even as I was just talking about like better inputs, the GDP data and the labor statistics data that have been highly contested over the last 40 to 60 days from the Trump administration, that data is now being put on chain, I believe through Chainlink, which is allowing for cross-chain minting, whether on Solana, XRP, Ethereum, other layer 2s, to effectively disperse and distribute this labor statistics and GDP data on chain across multiple chains. There's a couple of challenges there, because even if you know your issuer, in this case, the issuer is the Department of Labor. Well, what if the origin has been tainted? Compromised in some way? It's still trusted, it's still verifiable, it's still immutable, it's still the permanent record of the truth on chain, but it's been compromised at its source.
And just to put an exclamation point on that, the social engineering, which we all know is easier to pull off in the case of like a crypto hack, stealing your Ethereum wallet. I talked to you at the bar, you got your phone turned on, somehow I figure out your password. I social engineered you, right? I didn't have to know anything about computers or hacking in order to pull that off. So similarly, the social engineering of that GDP data was happening behind closed doors in private, obfuscated. Sorry, I hit the mic. I'm getting very wound up about this. Is now happening in plain sight, because if you come as the head of that department and say, I have the data, it's right here, and the president of the United States says, no, that's not the right data. I'm going to hire someone else to take your spot at my monopoly board, house rules, and I'm going to ask them what their community chess card says. And if I like that information better, then I'm going to go ahead and push that up and make that what is the truth on the blockchain. So the social engineering is happening. Oh my God, I'm coming apart. The social engineering is happening like at the point which you would expect before it ever even hits the blockchain. So again, the challenge I think for all of us, and my question still to you is, if there are that many sources that have to be checked in order for us to come up with what the real truth is, the layer, but we still have to know that the humans, fallible, compromisable humans involved, can be manipulated to create a truth that at the time, at the point of minting, is the most appropriate and the most well-accepted version of the truth, either by those in power or by the masses generally.
Well, this is the dystopian piece of it, of like, I keep going to these poly markets, but it's just the best example of how dystopian this can get, which is you could place a bet on what you think the truth is. And as long as you've got enough money to advertise to all the agents and manipulate, the output, then you've got enough data to put in to get whatever output you wanted out of it to begin with, which is not dissimilar from how we've been talking about all of the narratives at a very macro level that we live in and have lived in for the last 100 years in what has been called a free country. It's wild to get there, but
it's true. And then, of course, it brings us right back to the Epsilon story, which is, if you are in the business of selling information and ideas, but there's never a one-to-one correlation with an actual output, the data in, the data out, right? We know how much advertising dollars we spent. We know how much we hired Wyden Kennedy to create the commercial. We know how much we got the influencers to do these things, but we can't really connect that to how many of these new luxury shoes moved out of the factory that, by the way, likely is in China or India, and they are complicit in that whole cycle. And so now we're seeing the whole breakdown of where is the clean data? Where is the truth in how we're making all these decisions? And it just comes right back to everything that's happening right now in cryptocurrencies, that you see swings up and you see swings down, and you see thousands of people, some of them agents, some of them humans, coming out and trying to explain to you exactly what it is that has caused this, what had happened. We launched a $5 million marketing campaign, and that increased the presence of brand X at Wimbledon and caused this many sales, says the story. Well, you're going to tell me that the same thing is true of the data that we produce as a country, and that's why we should feel bullish about our economy, and we should be going out and borrowing more money and all these things, because it's like an if and a then, but in between the if and the then, there are so many opportunities for social manipulation, for hacking, for all these kind of obfuscating of what's really going on. Yeah, it makes me want to go buy more ETH when it dips again. I'll tell you that right now.
Pay attention to the heavens in September. I'm looking for lunar moons. I am looking for, I think, a lot of continued volatility. I think the Epstein files will reemerge with new versions of testimony, with new versions of the story, new remixes on the truth, the same old story getting re-rinsed and rewashed here throughout September as we will await the Fed decision, the Supreme Court rulings on whether or not Trump can fire Fed people and control pieces of the market that he doesn't legally have control over in plain daylight. We'll see. And that's all going to line us up right for October, right as we head into the deep fall and the beginning of Q1 for those who end on a September 30th fiscal year. So that's where I'm focusing in the next 4 weeks. Continue to watch this bumping across the bottom. I think what we saw at the 107 level on BTC will be, a bottoming that will continue to hold and grind through October. Talk to me in the next couple of weeks for any Black Swan events, continuing to monitor Epstein files, Russia, Ukraine, China. It's all connected. We'll do it again next week. This was a fun one.
This is a good one, man. I look forward to talking to you.
In the meantime, I'm going to ship you a Labubu. Keep your.
I want a Labubu, and then I'm going to put a $2 bill on whether or not Musk can tie up Apple and OpenAI's AI development progress as he starts to play the old, like, you banned me from the App Store, cry me a river game. That's another factor, is all the legal lawsuit / appeal and just slowing everyone down to a snail's pace in courts across the boards, whether it's political or it's financial or it's AI technical. That's a real deal, because lawyers got to make their money, and they're doing it now between now and Thanksgiving.
We'll do it again next week, sir. Peace.
Talk to you.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Off the Record, On the Rocks. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See you next time for more news and all things crypto and Web3.